Hello and welcome to episode 22 Election Countdown. I'm joined by Daniel from Debating Society. He's going to tell me what their society do and the state of debating in UK politics. So Daniel, what does Sheffield Debating do?
Okay, so we have a couple of main functions with the student union. So we've got like public debates, which happen every Monday during regular term time, so they're not happening right now. We do special events, so like the election hustings that happened however long ago it was, Friday a week back. And then we've also got like training sessions which are geared towards getting people into competitive debating. So we send teams of people, students from Sheffield University around the country and around the world to debate competitively with other people from other universities around the world. So we do loads of stuff like that.
And you've got the highly publicised events in Coffee Revs?
Yeah, so every Monday in Coffee Revs at 7 p.m. we will have a public debate. Normally what we do is we try to get external speakers as much as possible. Next year we're probably looking into doing them more infrequently, but higher profile each time. So like rather than getting in like, and obviously like collaborating more with other societies. So like we've collaborated more with like PolSoc and other things before, but we probably want to make it bigger and more external, collaborate with bigger people. So like external campaigns like Hope Not Hate, who we've worked with before, stuff like that.
And you have like professionals within politics sometimes you might have.
So those are always the most difficult to get because obviously their schedules are super variable. But like we've had Natalie Bennett, we've had Paul Blomfield, we've had a few other famous-ish people before. Most of the time it ends up being local councillors and things like Shafat Mohammed, the leader of the Lib Dems and the Sheffield Council, has like worked with us before, things like that. It tends to be more local Sheffield people rather than like national politicians, although I think Nick Clegg is about as approximate as we can get to a national politician.
And I can imagine nowadays you'd struggle to get him into the building.
Yeah, I mean, like, so before Brexit last year, so in the lead up, we wanted to have a big Brexit debate, and Nick Clegg was like all ready to do that, and then instead he went to speak at the Oxford Union, which is probably fair. They have a much bigger reach than we do.
It's still a bit of a snub for many who are his constituents.
Yeah, but like if it comes to impact, not that it helps much.
Do you think politics in general has become too centred around debate and not enough on informing people? No,
I think the problem is, like, there's, in the state of politics today, so if you look at the American election recently, everyone was being like, if we just all had the same facts, it would all be fine, people would make the right choices. I'm not sure that's true. I think quite often what you find is people choose their own facts and they prioritize their own facts based upon their already held political beliefs. So like, I am like liberal and I love like democracy and I love Europe, and so I over-prioritize some stuff about the EU that I particularly enjoy, right? But like, I to some extent deprioritize any extent to which there could be potentially like, I don't know, depression of wages for people who are in areas where there is a high influx of immigrants. Normally that isn't the case, but still. So like, it tends to be that people choose their own facts, in which case you need to then, I think, if anything, I think politics needs to be more centered around debate. I think it needs to be more centered around persuasion and persuading people of the other side. I think the left recently has become very bad at persuading people that they are competent and effective. So like, if you look at the last election, people did not trust the Labour Party to run their finances. But in the 90s, people did. And I think quite often you're very rarely going to shift people off the economy, given that it has such an impact on people's lives. You do need to work out a way to argue that you are going to be effective on the economy. I think political parties need to get better at debating than anything else.
Do you think we have to get better at trying to get people, trying to get the average person on board by being less confrontational?
So I think the way that we do, so like the way that you persuade someone is very different depending on context. Like if you're in a debate that like Sheffield debating might do, the whole point is to some extent there's an entertainment value, right? So you want to be there's a bit of bravado, you want to like tell jokes, and you want to mock the other side, and you're trying to make their arguments look weaker. You're not necessarily trying to like give them the best possible. I'm trying to think of the correct cliche, but like essentially you don't want to treat them.
So it has to have an entertainment value as much as it informs people.
If you're trying to persuade someone of a thing, I think being confrontational is usually a very bad idea. That isn't to say that you want to just understand them and just be like, you're correct entirely. You just want to have a good way of approaching them to think about from something about a different way.
Do you think Prime Minister's questions are healthy for democracy? Because a lot of people I talk to think that, particularly swing voters, think that politicians in the House of Commons look a bit juvenile when they're up on the benches shouting at each other.
So the thing is, I actually have no real problem with the way that the Prime Minister's questions happens. I think I'm in the minority on that. I think people dislike the idea that politicians could ever have they expect a weird sense of decorum that I just don't think that is necessary for good debate. Like they have microphones in the House of Commons, so it's not like you can't hear people. And occasionally people jeering is just how people behave. When you get a large, a 600-odd group of people into a room and who they're all vastly disagree, I think expecting them all to be quiet is super difficult. What is clear is that Prime Minister's question probably doesn't do that much, but the main point is just so that the way that Prime Minister's questions functions is so that you can occasionally get a narrative either from the Prime Minister or the Leader of the Opposition of the media can then pick up on and further scrutiny can happen throughout the week. It's not the case that in the Prime Minister's questions you're suddenly going to have Theresa May conceding something, but what you want is to have that scrutiny there. And I think Prime Minister's questions fulfills that function because they have the lobby system, because they have in Parliament, because they have all the journalists and they have all the TV cameras there. So people are able to engage with it, and then that creates future media narratives.
Do you think that DebateSoc could, at some point, develop a similar model, much like Oxford Union?
So the current model that we have is not too dissimilar to the Oxford Union. So it depends. The Oxford Union have 3 or 4 people on each side, and they go one speaker, one speaker, one speaker, one speaker. And we have broadly the same, but we have it slightly shorter. And we don't. The main difference is we don't have a fancy debating chamber. We don't have everyone in black tie, and we don't have questions from the floor in the same way. So we separate the questions from the floor, so you don't directly respond. I, to be honest, think all of that makes ours a more laid back and more accessible atmosphere. Because I think a lot of people do find the Oxford. Not only is it just a bit stuffy. But to some extent, it's a lot easier if you've been invited to ask a question than it is to confront a speaker when from the floor. So I think that our model as is fine.
Okay. Moving on to the election, do you think a televised debate would have been better between Corbyn and Theresa May outside the House of Commons?
So TV debates tend not to have too much impact in terms of people. So I think the way that TV debates work is not that suddenly you're going to persuade everyone in that evening, because people go into it with preconceived ideas, and they go into it, they question the people that they're against, and they don't question the people that they're for. The thing it does do is equalise the playing field a bit. So people who are potentially polling less well look like potential contenders, or can change the way that they are currently perceived. So if you remember the 2010 election, ages ago, back when I was...
Back when Nick Berg was popular.
Yeah, back then. Gordon Brown and David Cameron spent the entire debate going, I agree with Nick. And that to some extent contributed to a Lib Dem surge, which meant that they rose to their highest voting percentage in ages, right? So like that type of thing can happen due to debates, but I'm not necessarily certain that it's going to act as a particular method to persuade anyone.
Do you think interview format is better in terms of getting information out there, though, and a chance for people and politicians to interact?
I think it can be. I think it depends on how the interview's constructed. I think you need to empower an interviewer to push for an answer. I think you need to have well-selected questions. I think you need to make sure that you can either. It depends on the level of prep that the people are allowed to do to give themselves either the best opportunity to answer those questions effectively. All of those things matter. I think it's probably more useful in terms of finding out stuff in an interview format than in a debate, if we're comparing the two.
Which party leader's been performing better, do you think?
Okay, so I think all of them have been performing pretty abjectly. So, if anything, the best campaign has been coming from the Labour Party. But a lot of their talking heads have not been very effective. So Diane Abbott, obviously, she had the whole thing with
she was on again today on Andrew Marr. It was poor.
Yeah. I think Jeremy Corbyn has improved a great extent in being able to understand and being able to respond to the attacks. And I think he just comes across relatively genuinely. Theresa May is very clearly not good in a confrontational. She's not as fast on her feet. So she's if we're comparing the two major parties, Jeremy Corbyn is performing better, even despite his various associations with the IRA. That claim is not sticking with the people it needs to stick with. So if you're looking at polling data, the people who already hate Jeremy Corbyn believe it and think he's awful. The people who are in the Labour Party will explain it away however they want to, and the people who are on the fence, the young people at our age don't remember the IRA, so they don't really have an opinion, and people who are slightly older think his line is not inconceivably mad, even though it's mostly lies.
Do you think it's positive in one sense that we've moved beyond the age of Blair and Cameron, and that we're no longer style over substance?
I think that it was never so little substance. I think because people talk in sound bites, there's a perception that there is no substance there. But the average person, I think there's various stats that happen, but the average person pays attention to politics 9 minutes a week or whatever. Sound bites are basically the debate that happens, and you need to be able to channel your campaign into a message, and a strategic message that you can persuade someone with in those 9 minutes. So the Conservative Party at the last election, they compare debt to household debt, and they go, it's like a mortgage. If you've got a mortgage, you don't spend more than you have. That's really silly. Obviously, the country isn't a house, and mortgages work very differently to government debt, but that is an effective distilled message that can persuade my mum, right? So and my mum is the average, is mostly an average voter, right? So that's the type of thing which they work, and I think that is the much substance as you're going to get. You're never going to get the vast majority of the public sitting down and dissecting policies, and I think wanting them to misses the point.
Do you think Theresa May has suffered during this election because she's failed to move beyond sound bites?
No, I think she suffered in this election because several things have happened during the campaign which have massively changed the previous perception of her. So the U-turn on the dementia tax has, first of all, it has annoyed a lot of her own base, and then the U-turn itself has made her look neither strong nor stable. I think her reliance on strong and stable actually worked pretty well for the first few weeks. I think the main problem with the Tory campaign is that they have been sort of absent, and the Labour Party has, despite being incredibly unpopular, been able to talk and been able to explain. And because everyone's terrified of a huge Tory majority, people who would normally swing between like Labour and the Lib Dems or Labour and the Tories are terrified of a huge, overwhelming Tory majority, so they are sticking with the Labour Party as like in this election as like we're going to sit down and hold our noses and vote type election.
But do you think all of this is helping Labour's surge recently?
I think the Labour surge, so I'd be wary with calling it a Labour surge. They are still not as popular as the Conservative Party. They have improved in popularity, especially since the dementia tax, but I'd be wary of overstating it, especially given that there has been basically a week of Labour success and basically no Tory response that's been effective. It looks like that might change in the final couple of weeks. The Tories will be very aggressively campaigning.
Do you think Corbyn's got an improved style coming into this election?
So, at the beginning, so when he was elected leader of the Labour Party and it was against David Cameron was winning week on week in Prime Minister's questions because Corbyn was attempting too much to try and tackle all of the various issues. So, like, he would have no consistent narrative throughout the questions. He would have no strategy to the way he's asking the questions. He would expect David Cameron to like play on the same level, and David Cameron very clearly wasn't. He was being strategically much better. Since Theresa May, and since just I think people have like told Tara Jones realised it's not been working. Like the People's Prime Minister's questions is a distant memory, and in PMQs he's been performing a lot better. Basically, by going back to the old style, because it is actually a pretty effective way of constructing a narrative that attacks the other side.
In the basic stuff like wearing a sharper suit and looking more well trimmed has helped him.
No, I don't think it does. I don't think anyone. So like it probably helps with the perception that he's a credible candidate, right? I don't think until this week I even considered the possibility. Like I still don't think he will win, but like I don't even think until this week I considered the idea of him being Prime Minister. And the fact that they've had this surge, and the fact that the Tories have fallen back and potentially going to be losing seats if the YouGov poll is correct, I think at that point I had like a realization that he could genuinely be Prime Minister. And I think the fact that he's up there and performing not incompetently is normalising him to some extent. So it might be the sharper suit, I doubt it.
Do you have any predictions for this election?
If before the campaign, I was certain of a plus 100 seat majority for the Conservative Party, with the Lib Dems being very meh and probably staying around 8 or 9 seats, and the Labour Party suffering huge losses. Now I am less certain. I think the ceiling for the Conservative Party is still like 100 seats. Because there's definitely some evidence that in marginal constituencies they are polling a lot better, and they will definitely, I think, hold a lot of their seats that they won in the last election. It doesn't look like Labour is going to be stealing seats from them. So I definitely think the Conservatives will win and there will be a majority. But I think compared to the expectations of where they were, they could be about much, much lower than they actually are.
Okay, we're back. So about the 340, 350 mark?
Yeah, I think it is more likely now that they will end up with only like a 50 or 60 seat majority.
Do you think it's possible for this Labour surge to continue, for things to keep getting better and for Tories to keep on being the moving car crash that is their campaign?
So even with the Tories performing like their campaign has been awful, even with all that, they're still 5 points ahead. So I would be very wary of assuming that this latest Labour surge is going to lead to any improvement in the number of Labour seat totals. If anything, it looks like Labour are piling on votes in safe seats. So like Sheffield Central will probably go Paul Monfield with an even more increased majority. And like Islington North will be very, very red. They need to be winning in like Nuneaton and various other places.
Well, target number 1 is in South Wales, where they've just had a recent surge. Yeah, that's all I've got for questions. Thank you for coming on. Cool. Debate Shop. Remember to like, subscribe if it gets on YouTube. And yeah, tomorrow I'll have Maz Warswick, Chief Editor of The Tab, and we'll be talking about the alt-right.